Hey guys, Steve, Hobo with Wood here. Product placement. It's free. If it's free, it's for me. That's free. I'm not paid to do that. I just like my spree. So, I've had a couple of questions and remarks about my settings. My settings are irrelevant. Don't like to spit my spree either. Every laser is unique. Even though we have the same xTool 10 watt, there are different parameters, different factors that are going to come into play that are going to affect that laser's ability to cut the material you're working with. So my advice to you is to test anything you're trying to cut, burn, or engrave and get a feeling for what your laser is going to do with that setting at that moment. Because all kinds of things come into play. Quick short story. I bought lumber, brought it home from Lowe's, went right to the laser, cut it, produced some really good material. 24 hours later, came back in to reproduce the same thing again, and the laser wouldn't cut through the material. Nothing changed except 24 hours passed. Something did change. That wood had started to become acclimated to my environment. It had been stored in a warehouse at Lowe's in a somewhat climate-controlled environment. Here in the shop, I have nothing going, no heat, no air. It's open, ventilated, so it's a lot more humid in here than it ever had been in that shop in that warehouse at Lowe's. So the density of the wood changed, and the same parameters that I used in cuts, settings that I used 24 hours ago didn't work. So the lesson I learned from that is, if you want to have a template that you can trust almost reliably, you need to let that wood become acclimated to your environment before you start doing your test. Otherwise, it's not going to be the same 24 hours, 48 hours later. But with that said, you do need a springboard, a place to start from, because from 0 power to 100% power, that's a big difference, and you don't know where to start with. Well, xTool actually did that for you. And let's jump in here and show you what I'm talking about. Minimize the camera, go to xTool's home screen. There we go. This is actually not the home screen. Let's go to their home screen. There we go. No, home. There we are. I want you to be able to see where this is at and how you can get to it. But if you hang around, those who watch this video are going to see how to get this library installed in your computer so you don't have to go to this website to find it. But this is how you get it if you don't want to go to the trouble of setting it up. xTool's website, you go to Explore, Material Settings, and here it lists you the different cut settings and engrave settings for both their D1 and their laser box, and all the different types of materials: wood, leather, metal, paper, acrylic, fabric, rock, ceramic, and glass. This is a tad bit confusing to use. That's why if you watch long enough, you'll see how to make it much simpler. But this we're in the D1 settings here, but this is the 5 watt D1 and the 10 watt D1, and soon will be the 5, 10, and 20 watt D1. So you have to pay attention to which laser you're looking at. Are you looking at a cut line or an engraved line? And the way that they put their settings in here, if you look, they list power, percentage, speed, and then number of passes. Well, I'm used to, and all the software I've looked at does speed and then power. So your brain's trained to think one way, and now you got to switch gears and go another. My brain don't work that good. But if we look at the black acrylic, or acrylic in general, It starts out with a semi-clear, then they have pink, and then they have black. And they list the thicknesses of the material, 1 millimeter, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and up to 3. 3 millimeters of black acrylic. All right. So where is my piece? Here it is. I did a video just the other day where someone asked about my settings, where I cut a monogram out of black acrylic. Now this is 2.5 millimeter black acrylic. And in the xTool's D1 settings, for 2.5 millimeters of black acrylic to cut with the 10 watt D1, they want you at 100% power, 3 passes. I'm sorry, see, this is so screwy. 100% power, 3 millimeters a second, and 2 passes. See that? That square was my test cut for this particular piece of black acrylic. I did this test with these settings, and it did it nice and clean and presented well, and I was like, okay. So I used these settings for this black acrylic and got really good results. Looking for another piece I just cut. Oh, here we go. I just tried this. I was trying to do a test burn or a test pattern, and I got some really surprising results. Here they're saying you need to do 2 passes at 3 millimeters a second, 2 at 3 at 100 in order to be able to cut through this 2.5 millimeter material. Well, the test burn that I tried, I can't see, move my camera. I hate this thing sometimes. Material test. All right, I tried, no, stupid, load my material test. Presets, black acrylic, preview. All right, so this is the test burn that I just tried. Now, they were saying that you needed to move at 3 millimeters a second at 100% power with 2 passes, which is what this was. So they were saying you had to be at least to here in order to cut through this 2.5 millimeter material. I was expecting this test burn to show that the faster you went, with the lower the speed, it would be more of an engraving than it would be a cutting. Well, that's the first 4 lines, and I quit because if those first 4 lines cut completely through and cleanly, then I knew the last one was going to at a much lower speed of only 1 millimeter a second. But there was 5 millimeters a second, and oh yeah, and the very last square that was cut, it cut clean through with 1 pass, only 1 pass, not 2. So their settings are only a springboard, a launch board on where you should start from. So I learned with this that I did with this acrylic. It's not to be said the same could be true. Said not the same could be true for the acrylic you buy from xTool, but this acrylic, and I'll put a link to this acrylic that I bought from Amazon in the comments. But that acrylic is 2.5 millimeters thick, and it burnt through in 5 millimeters a second, 1 pass at 96% power. So it can be even faster and lower power. So that's why you test. That's why, and no one settings is a absolute. You got to test. All right, now, if you don't want to be going back and forth to this screen to try and find xTool's recommendations, I got a library for you. If you're not familiar with this, over here, this is where you'll have your cut layers and your laser controls, but you also can have libraries and art libraries. And if you haven't set up your libraries yet, this is something that you really do want to get set up. Here's a design, and I can just, boom, import it. Check out my wood. Hobo with wood is a t-shirt I've got coming. Clear that. No, I don't need to save anything. Hobo wood. Here's my logo. Add. Zoom in nice. So once you've created a project, you can save it and then bring it right into your product in a snap and not have to constantly recreate things. And you don't have to save them in a file to go, then later go and import them. You can create art libraries, and you have, this is your cut libraries. Now, this is everything that was available at the time xTool had tested. I'm sure they may have tested some new stuff now that's not in here, but this is a great place to start. If we look at dark acrylic, you click on the arrow, and it asks you, are you wanting to engrave? It doesn't have the cut set up in here, but engraving, and here's your different thicknesses. Oh, there's cuts. I'm sorry, I told you a fit. All right, so engrave, and if you look at, okay, actually I'm glad I got this in the work table. So with that there, right now if we go to let's go to cuts and layers so you can see what's set up here. I go to that layer, and right now it has it set at 60 and 80 on this multi-cut. Okay, but we want to change this, and I want it to go to the settings to engrave it on acrylic. See, those settings are 30 and 50, not what was already in the layer. I want to assign those. Well, if I come here, I've got dark acrylic, I highlight that engrave, I have that layer selected, I come right over here, assign. Copy this library cut setting to your currently selected layer. Assign that. You go back and look at your cuts and layers. Look, it's changed your speed and power for you. So this is a way that when you do test on materials, you can add and change this as you need to and as you see fit. If you start working with doing the stainless, here we go, engraving stainless flask. Well, they've got one setting here at 3 millimeters a second and 100% power. Now, I just thought of, mine is set up at millimeters a second. If you're working in inches, it will convert that automatically for you. You don't have to worry about, oh, I'm not working at that setting. This will take that into account. But 3 millimeters a second and 100% power may not work for you on the material that you're using on your stainless project. And if that's the case, you can go in and change it, say okay, and then tell it to save. And now it's going to save that setting in your library for the next time you're using that same product. You'll find that ABC's stainless might react differently to your laser than XYZ's. And you can set up a separate cut in your library for ABC and XYZ. And so you have two different settings for the two different materials, different manufacturers. So I'm going to put a link to this library in the comments as well. So you'll have the ability to grab that library and import it into your LightBurn and start playing with this, and it hopefully will save you a ton of time. But if you haven't explored libraries and LightBurn, Art Library and Library are huge, huge time savers. You need to have those set up if you're doing jobs repeatedly and you don't want to be recreating work constantly. All right, so hopefully that helps. Look for the links in the description. Subscribe. Hit the notifications bell. Look for any future videos. And if you have any questions that you want me to try and help, if it's something I've came across already, I'll try and share my information with you. And guys, if I've made any mistakes, please put them in the comments, correct me, and I will make changes and do a different video showing the corrections. Like, look at my 2 videos out there for fill. I had some great comments from some of my YouTube viewers that informed me about flood fill. And I had seen it before, but I hadn't found it. But thanks to your comments, I found it. I did a second video showing fill, offset fill, and flood fill. Those are huge time savers. If you haven't seen that video, look for it. Flood fill is gotta have it. All right. Again, thanks for watching. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. I'm Steve. See you in the next video.